So years ago, I got I don't know, a message or inspiration or something that I was supposed to go visit the dean of a nearby acupuncture college where I lived in Southern California. When the time came, I went there, and it turned out that the dean of the college was not present. So I sat down in the waiting room and I picked up a magazine from the coffee table, and I found it very interesting, fascinating in fact. It was all about an indigenous group of people in Mexico I had never heard of before called the Huichols. Their traditions seemed to combine my two greatest interests in life, which were, and still are, healing and spirituality. Anyway, it was so compelling that I actually found it very hard to sleep that night, which is unusual for me. And something told me I just had to see if I could go and meet these people. After a year, I found myself in a Huichol village attending ceremony with a great shaman. And although the ceremony was going on in their language, I had visions that I later found out were visions of some of the sacred places that were being sung about. And I also determined that I would ask him for a healing, which I did. And it was extraordinary. I mean, I had received some wonderful healings from some wonderful healers before, but this one surpassed anything I had experienced before. It seemed to me that there was something about this indigenous shamanism business that must be for me. And I got really serious about that after the death of my father. So I began to look for somebody who could teach me and guide me in this matter. And I traveled around a lot. I met a lot of very interesting, fascinating healers and teachers and so forth. But none of them clicked with me, or I didn't click with them, I guess would be more like it. Until after about 7 years of this, I found myself in Mexico and telling another shaman, a different one, about some dreams I had about one of the mountains that I saw and became fascinated with in an earlier trip. And that mountain had been helping me with my healing work. So he listened closely and he said, yes, that's the way it is. And by the way, since you've had these dreams and the mountain's been helping with you, you should go, as many of our healers have done, and ask for medicine there. Ask for medicine that you can share. And he said he couldn't do that himself, but he introduced me some weeks later to someone who could, because they knew the mountain very well. So I explained my dream, and to my surprise, unlike all the other elders that I consulted during these many years, he didn't turn me away or run me off. He said, well, yes, you should go there to the mountain. I can take you. Did you bring your things? And I said, no, I didn't. And we made a date to go on pilgrimage a few weeks later to this very special mountain. And as he said, it turned out to be a mountain where many of their marakames, or shamans, had received their medicine. After some time, my teacher, whose name was Don Guadalupe Gonzalez Rios, let me know that I was going on these pilgrimages with him because he was considering me an apprentice to become a shaman or a marakame in the Huichol tradition. I had had no idea, but there I was. So I followed with him as my teacher for years, and finally took initiation, which qualified me as a marakame myself after, well, it took me 7 years. After that time, I began my own practice of Huichol shamanic healing, and found that even by the high standards of work I had done and seen others do, extraordinary. And I was surprised and delighted to find out that this very ancient medicine coming from a people far away and a distant culture was very appropriate and very useful for people like ourselves living in this culture in this world today. And eventually I found myself called upon to lead others on that same path. Now, it turns out, I discovered, as I said, that medicine was very useful, very appropriate, deep, and powerful for people like ourselves. And after working for some time, I found that doing this work in a residential setting over a period of a few days, together with, in addition to the healing work, some work by some of my colleagues who were conducting sort of classes and processes to support the work, made it even deeper and more long-lasting. And finally, not so many years ago, I discovered that the place, the physical location where it's done, is also very important. Because when I started working here at the Blue Deer Center, at this special sacred land, the spirit of which supports this kind of work, that added yet another dimension to the depth and effectiveness in the medicine. So the traditional Huichol medicine, supported by the sacred place, supported by the offerings of other Marakames, is what's on offer here in Healing Camp.